Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's live session on Indian construction and mining equipment industry. This session is brought to you by the team at India's only dedicated off-highway event, CVF Off-Highway. Before we begin today's session, I wanted to take this time to especially thank our partners for supporting this session, the Belmax Group, Nandan Petrochem, and also the official media partner for today's session, NBM and CW, India's #1 magazine for the sector. So Belmax Group is someone who has supported us since day one, since our very first event, Commercial Vehicle Forum, or CVF as it's more popularly known, 5 years ago. Belmax is a leading sheet metal and fabrication supplier to construction and mining OEMs, both in India and abroad, with a specialization in frames and complex fabrications. They are also one of India's largest truck chassis frame and heavy tipper manufacturers. I've personally had the pleasure of working closely with the Belmax Group over the past 5 years, and can attest to the fact that this is one company where three generations put their heart and soul into the work to ensure customer thrill. They have 8 plants in India that manufacture some of the most complex and toughest fabrications in the industry in high volumes. For example, 16-ton and 16-meter long mobile crusher chassis. Belmax Group is now expanding the product portfolio by entering cabins as well. To know more about the Belmax Group, I would like to now direct your attentions to your screen where we'll be playing a short video. Thanks for your attention. Our second webinar partner for this session is Nandan Petrochem Limited, which is one of the leading manufacturers of genuine oils, greases, and specialty oils with a significant pan-Indian overseas presence. They market specialty German technology lubricants under the brand Velvex and are also the pioneer and largest manufacturers of AdBlue in India. So to know more about Velvex German technology lubricants and AdBlue from Nandan Petrochem, I would like to now direct your attention to your screens wherein we'll be playing another short video. So here you go. thank you all for your attention. So to move on to the topic of discussion, in terms of the agenda for today's session, we will be having a panel discussion and we'll run few polls during the session. So invite you to please share your thoughts. And then finally, we will close with an audience Q&A at the end. So before we start this session, just wanted to share a small ground rule. I would request all the attendees to direct any questions that may have to the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. I'm asking you to do that so that it helps us refer to your questions in a focused manner. You can also upvote these questions so that that will help us in addressing the most burning topics. So please note once again, questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our moderator for today's session, Ms. Pavitra Ponia, who is Vice President and Sector Head at ICRA. Pavitra is a member of the Ratings Committee at ICRA and has been working there for over the past 15 years. She has been analyzing India's corporate landscape closely and is currently looking at the auto component, hospitality, mining and construction equipment sectors at ICRA. Over to you, Pavitra.
Thank you very much, Rohit. COVID-19 has been a disruptor of unfathomable proportions, the linear and indirect impact of which is still evolving across sectors, including the one we're going to be discussing today. In several sectors, we appear to be slowly inching towards a new lower level of normal. So what we're trying to answer here today collectively is a potential direction for this industry in the coming months, given all the curveballs the pandemic is throwing at us. Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for joining me and the panelists on this webinar on Indian mining and construction equipment industry. We have a very illustrious panel here today to help us work through this problem. So let me take a minute to introduce our panelists for the day. I'll start with Mr. Vikram Sharma. Mr. Sharma is one of the past presidents of ICMA and the erstwhile MD and CEO of Kobelco Construction Equipment India. He continues as the advisor India and South Asia at Kobelco India. He brings over 4 decades of knowledge on this sector, having navigated through numerous industry cycles. Our next panel, Sri M.V. Rajshekhar, is Director Mining and Construction Equipment and member on the board of BEML Limited. He has over 31 years of varied experience across several functions like R&D, production, marketing in equipment and aggregates of mining and construction equipment, in addition to BEML's defense and rail and metro business. Mr. Rajshekhar did his MTech from IIT Chennai and MS in Technology Management from Germany. Our third panelist, Mr. Ajay Mandar, is the CEO at Escorts Construction Equipment and a board member of Escorts JV with Tadano. He brings to the table over 27 years of experience in leadership positions in companies like L&T, Indian Aluminium Company, Saud Bhawan Group, and Manitou South Asia. Prior to Escorts, Mr. Mandar was Director Operations with Toyota Material Handling Equipment. Our fourth panelist, Mr. Jaideep Shekhar, is the Managing Director for Asia, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Russia at Terex Material Processing. He has over 2 decades of experience in the mining sector, having started his career at Metso Minerals. Mr. Jaideep has a career spanning leadership roles in various geographies at Terex. And to close our panel, our fifth panelist, Mr. Hemant Mathur, the head for sales and marketing for Tata Hitachi, brings with him a wealth of over 3 decades of experience in the industry. Prior to Tata Hitachi, Mr. Mathur spent considerable time at L&T. He's been part of some of the leading engineering organizations in India and thought panels on technology matters related to the industry over the years. So the collective wisdom of about 150 years here today will try and answer a lot of pressing questions in our mind about this sector, most importantly on demand. To begin, let's add to it with all the wisdom in the audience. Rohit, can we run our first poll, please? So the question is, when will the sector see demand recovery and reach somewhere near normalcy? Options are in the next 3 to 6 months, will take between 6 to 12 months, and can take over 1 to 2 years. So while you vote, and for the benefit of the viewers, let me give you some context by very quickly summing up what the market has looked like in the last 9 months. Q4 of FY20, starting January of the current calendar year, saw the industry degrow by about 25%, with March volumes falling by about 65%. Come April, and volumes fell by 95%. May, it fell by 70%. Overall, in Q1 of FY21, volumes fell by as much as 60%. And mind you, mining was not affected as much during this period, but urban construction was in a bad space. Now, July is when the magic started, and volume started trending up for almost all big equipments other than excavators. Backhoes grew by over 30%. Again, do remember that the base effect of the 2019 election period is inflating these numbers to an extent. Demand sustained in August at over 20% YOY, and our take is that September has been strong too. So now, before we go to the panelists and get their outlooks, can we look at the results now, Rohit? So 47% of us in this room today think that it'll take about 6 to 12 months for recovery. 28% of us think it's going to take 1 to 2 years before we see some recovery happening. Right. Thanks, Rohit. So do remember that notwithstanding the pickup in the last 3 months, CE demand, construction equipment demand, is intrinsically linked to the GDP growth. So sustainability of demand hinges on various factors happening in the underlying economy. So as introductory remarks, can I request Mr. Sharma and Mr. Mandar to briefly help answer the most pressing question in everybody's minds? Mr. Sharma, where is demand headed? And if you could please break this into 2 time horizons, the first 6 months and then FY22. Over to you, sir.
Thanks and good afternoon to everyone. You see, last year, we saw a slow year up to November, and from December onwards, we started seeing a good growth. So therefore, things were in place and the industry was moving well, the demands were moving well, finances were helping out. And then we were hit by COVID in March. And I'm happy to say that in the last 6 months, we have seen every month the demand improving. You see, from a near washout in the month of March or in the month of April, we've seen that the month of September for some of the equipments, and let me clarify for some people's benefit, that 70% plus of the equipment is constituted by earth moving, which is backhoe loaders and excavators. And if I speak of both of these, the month of September, we've seen market industry better than last year, at least in the case of backhoe loaders. It's been a fantastic comeback. And even excavators is inching very close to it. So if I was to very quickly look at the figures and share with you, from minus 95% in April, going down to minus 13% July, minus 2% August, it's about plus 11.5% for excavators in the month of September. However, still, I would not like to, take it on a very, very positive note for the next 6 months, because while mining is doing very well, and Mr. Rajshekhar would later share with you, it's also the road building which has picked up, and road building is the prime mover for our industry. While this first half, H1, has finished at about minus 37% when we compare to last year, our expectation is that the next half, we would see a positive coming out as compared to last year, or could be a little more because of the effect of March. And what I have worked out, I look at it as being H2 being about plus 21%, and I'm talking a financial year to clarify. But overall, this year would be minus about 15%, generally speaking, as I look at our industry, because a few factors we have to keep in mind. Financiers, while they are very, very positively helping us at this moment, however, there are a few factors they are also looking at. A lot of customers did take up the moratorium which was offered, and we are now watching from the month of September and in October how this would lay out. Current month, it has been a very good response. Very few people have defaulted, as I found out from the finance community. And we expect that this would go on. And secondly, we should also keep in mind that our supply chain and vendor chain, how fast they would be able to react to the pickup in volumes is another factor which will keep it a little low. So I feel this year we may end up being minus 10 to 15% as compared to the previous financial year. Do you want me to go to the next year, or that comes later?
Very briefly, sir, if you could.
Okay, yeah. So for next year, I see things better. We will definitely have some pullbacks due to maybe government spending There could be cutbacks. There could be diversion to other projects which are more health related, more people related. States are suffering due to low collection. There is a constant GST fight going on between states and the government. So state projects may also take a bit of a setback. However, looking at low numbers this year, next year would be definitely positive, could be positive according to me, plus 30% to 40% of what will be this year. But keep in mind that only by 2 years, 3 years, 2.5 years later, we may reach back to 2018-19 volumes. So the industry would have lost 2 to 3 years in terms of setback. That's my take.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. So FY21 -10 to -15, FY22 about a jump of 30 to 40%, and 2 to 3 years back before the industry is back to pre-COVID levels. Mr. Mander, your take on this, please?
Yeah, Vikram, you have already taken the game out. It's basically, I agree with him in the sense that last year was not a good year for us. We saw 25% down, 25 to 27% down, depending upon what products you do. This year, starting was washed out because of pandemic and the unprecedented black swan movement that we had. It was basically, we were all looking at recovering from that. Now that the recovery has started, as rightly put in by Vikram, we can see the recovery started from the month of July onwards, and September has been a good month for all of us. I expect, again, the same, basically 30 to 40% down H1, and again, a certain amount of recovery. I'm more optimistic. I look at it 37% to 40% kind of recovery happening because we have a smaller base. The base was much lower last year. It was already 25% down to the previous year. So I feel that we should be able to do very close to last year numbers. We should be able to regain because there is a lot of pent-up demand. And the grey revolution that the government is talking about, and talking about investment of $100 billion going into the road construction, 40% is visible. 40% of that has already gone into investments. The projects are in execution stage. So mathematics, which I generally look at, is if you spend 1 billion, you get for every 100 rupees spent on infrastructure, you get 15 rupees into the construction equipment. So if I do a rough calculation, we are talking about 6 billion per year kind of spend, and which is as much equal to 2019 numbers. So I expect next year to be a very buoyant year. You can expect 25% growth. But still, it will take us 2 years to reach 2019 numbers because we are recovering from a smaller base, and there has been contractions that has happened in the past 2 years, including this year.
Thank you, Mr. Mandara. Interesting thumb rule: 15 rupees for every 100 rupees spent on the infrastructure.
Calculations will come out of the same.
Okay. So having set the direction now, let's look at what's happening in the demand driver space and individually on certain key demand drivers. Now, construction equipment demand comes from urban spaces, agriculture, non-agriculture, rural space, and infrastructure. Currently, demand appears to be emerging predominantly from the rural non-agri segments and, of course, roads. So now, as long as COVID-19 was an urban problem, there was a hope that activity in the rural engine will help India emerge faster from this economic crisis. The rampant spread of the COVID into the hinterlands now leaves us cautiously optimistic about this space. So in this context, could I request Mr. Mathur and Mr. Mander again to answer this question? Mr. Mathur, how do you see the rural non-agriculture and agriculture story playing out for construction equipment? Are schemes like Manrega, PMGSY, PM Kisan, and other rural schemes helping enough? Mr. Mathur?
Yeah, so as far as the agricultural level of activity, as seen from the perspective of the construction and mining equipment industry is concerned, just to take a call, the common ground there would be backhoe loaders. We also make backhoe loaders, and the queue to the availability of funds and the willingness of the industry to spend in purchasing equipment is visible from Let's say if you look at the figure of the tractor sales, which has picked up quite remarkably, which suggests two, three things. One, that the money is available, that the government has been able to make money available to them through their various schemes. And the one is just Manrega, which of course has literally created jobs and started the projects in the rural hinterland. Second is the sale of tractors, a component of which also goes into construction, not just tilling and mulching, but backloaders also go for deep mulching of the soil. So that also seems to be picking up. The growth in backloaders, as both Mr. Sharma and Mr. Mandar have said, has been quite spectacular. The recovery has been very quick. As a matter of fact, last month, as they said, the sales were higher than the sale in the previous year itself. So the story of the last 2-3 months is very different from the first 2-3 months of this financial year. And that would seem to suggest that money and demand is both available. The government has been very aggressively providing contracts, spending money, investing in rural schemes. PMGSY, I think the construction activity for this year is already in H1 itself is more than 1,000 kilometers in excess of last year's achievement. The figures are, of course, for I think August. The September figures may create the difference. We are already 1,000 kilometers in road construction completed under PMGSY, which is in the rural sector. So that shows the level of activity and hence the demand for equipment. We also have been watching in terms of the availability of funds, the amount of money that the government has been spending from the Housing and Urban Affairs and Water and Sanitation Ministries and Rural Development. If you see the annual spend of the Ministry of Rural Development, they have already spent almost 95% of the annual budget, which would seem to suggest that a large portion of the money, of course, the government has in the past not shied away from providing money to such schemes, Manrega, PMGSY, etc. The problem has more been on the execution. The execution in PMGSY seems to suggest that they are actually focusing on it and therefore it is sustainable. As far as the money going to Manrega is concerned, I would think that bulk of the money which is routed through the states has probably gone in for revenue expenditure, which is fighting the COVID-related expenses. So that may not be contributing to the equipment industry or the development of infrastructure, but it does create an overall improvement in sentiment and availability of job and opportunities for people to buy and invest in construction machinery. If you see the sale of tractors, which is an indication of the money available and the desire to invest in equipment, and then the sale of backhoe loaders, which is driven to a large extent by, and from the discussions with financiers, we know that nobody is hassling them too much about the LTVs on backhoe loaders, etc. I think it's the herd mentality which we see a momentum getting created, where a large number of machines will get sold in the rural segment also. So as far as the construction, so urban sector, probably a little more susceptible to COVID at this point of time. But for backhoe loaders and that part of the industry in the rural segment, which you asked me about, I think the demand is sustainable. And the government has done a good job in creating that environment where the demand for equipment will be sustained and driven by the expenditure at this point of time. This, of course, goes into roads, which Ajay was saying, that when we see the demand drivers of our industry, almost 20% of the money now goes into road construction and almost 18-19% goes into urban development. I mean, this is a broad classification. There must be many ways of looking at these numbers. Roads, we are ahead of the race in any case. So we are just not looking at the NHAI figures, even in the state subject for the money which is routed through MORTH, where the states spend the money and their own PWD works. I think the overall story is robust and sustainable. So it should be good overall.
Thank you. Mr. Mathur, continuing with what Mr. Mandar, continuing with what Mr. Mathur spoke about, the front loading of all the rural expenditure. So given this context, is the government stimulus adequate to keep driving demand in the rural market towards the end of the year? Or do we run out of rural budgets at that point?
I think, if you look at tractor industry, as one datum for measuring the performance that is happening in the rural sector, you see, they are expecting a 10% growth this year over the previous year. There is a pent-up demand. The kharif crops, has gone well. The MSPs have played their game, and the new 3 rules that has come, now as policy change, probably would go a long way in building up this sector. And coming back to the infrastructure, you see India has about 3.3 million kilometers of road. About 80% of that is 2.6, 2.8 is basically coming from rural sector. So one can see the in the national highway numbers, if we are talking about anything between 27 to 30 kilometers per day kind of production on the national highway, in rural sector is much higher. You talk about 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers plus. And what will really benefit as we go forward is the people getting registered, the exodus of people, the labor that has happened to the rural sector, and their registration into Manrega. So Manrega registrations have gone up, and this is one way of providing employment to the people. I think government will keep spending a lot of money out there, and that will keep the industry, the rural sector alive for a much longer time. And if you see the impact, as Mathur Hemant said, that it is basically COVID is appearing to be a urban phenomena, more or less. Rural sectors, they have taken preventive actions at various places. In fact, when we go to the villages, we find that they have their own quarantine centers. They don't allow people to come in. So they are doing everything that has been directed to them. And I think the rural sector would be a leader in this segment for taking up the growth that we are also looking up in construction sector. Like, backhoe, Hemant has already talked about backhoe sale that is going up. It's probably, never seen that kind of sales. And probably this month will be even bigger because of festive seasons. And I think, the situation is much more better if I look now as compared to 2 months back.
So rural and backhoes, that story is really strong and will continue during the rest of the year.
Yes.
All right. So now coming to urban demand, which you did touch upon briefly, sir. This question is for Mr. Sharma and Mr. Mathur. Now, construction activity has been severely hit due to the COVID pandemic, particularly in real estate and several other allied sectors because of both supply and demand side issues. So lack of labor has been the biggest problem for this sector. So when do you see demand coming back from the for the urban space? Mr. Sharma, if you could take this question, please.
Yeah, okay. Urban demand is, let's say, if we take into two sections. One is, like you said, the real estate and the rest of it. Real estate is anyone's guesswork. I mean, I don't have any insight to say when will it come back. I can only share that nearly $65 billion worth of property and real estate is something which is dithering, which is no demands coming, nobody picking up, etc. It's a huge number. All your promoters are severely over leveraged. And what we saw, the infusion of foreign capital into this sector from 2005 to 2011 is not happening anymore. The story is not there to currently attract people. And if we were to look at the statements made by Mr. Gulabchand, who has a long experience in this sector, he has asked for big government support to stay, for this sector to stay alive, to stay afloat. And I don't think there is any answer with the government right now because it needs a huge amount of money to be pumped in. And structures have to be formed. We hear of RERE, we hear of other moves being taken up for this. So I don't think there is anything in the near future, at least 2-3 years, looking like coming back. As far as the rest of the urban sector is concerned, there is enough work going on. And like rightly mentioned, this is one area where, the labor coming back is a factor still. But my feeling is that it's just a matter of a month and a half. By now, a lot of labor has come back. In factories, at least, we see things are back to normal, road construction, etc. And urban projects also, now one sees, more activities happening. And when we talk to contractors, people are coming back. And there is definitely again going to be a good pickup. Maybe 2 months, 3 months later, last quarter of this financial, we'll see this sector coming back to what it was pre-COVID. That's my feeling.
Sure. Thank you, sir. So apart from real estate, the other urban space work has picked up. So Mr. Mathur, what are you seeing in the urban markets?
I'll definitely agree with what Mr. Sharma has said. He's an expert on the industry and he's been the past chairman of president of ICMA as well. So his understanding, the only qualification that I would like to make is where there could be a slight difference is that, when we talk of statistics about the number of people who have come back to the projects, and we are talking about construction projects in the urban area and factories which are normally in and around urban areas. So if you look at the number of people in large factories, large corporates, maybe 60-70% of the people are back statistically. In factories, maybe the percentage is much higher. Production has started in full steam and the factories. So that labor, the contract labor is in place. But what typically happens in the construction, the projects as such, there are type of projects which depend on a certain quality of labor. For example, if you look at projects related, for example, the construction of metro rails, for example, there it's not the normal labor or just about anybody. It's not just a pair of hands and legs that you can hire. You need people with a certain very specific set of skills, certain knowledge. They have to be better at construction, both in terms of working in limited spaces and the quality of work that needs to be done because it's more technically demanding. My understanding is that for such projects in very strictly urban areas, they have still not taken off. Construction of very highly demanding projects related to bridge construction and road construction within the city premises have not yet started in the sense. But you can see in most of the cities that you go around now, you can see the work related to the smart city projects is already gone. That's a labor intensive job happening in many places. The government is investing a lot of money in that. That kind of work, cabling, pipe laying, digging, all that is going on. So urban, maybe there may be a slight lag in the urban demand per se. But as far as the projects in the hinterland and the backward related to mining or production, all that I think we are already seeing. We are back to square. We are back to or as close to normal as can be in other circumstances.
Just this thing. I also said the same thing to that I expect in the last quarter, not in the next quarter. I mean, I do expect labor to take 3-4 months more to come back the way we need them in projects. But I take your point. Highly specialized projects, maybe a little more lag, but I expect Jan to March quarter, many of the urban projects to start back.
Right. All right. Now comes the biggest part of the pie, and that's infrastructure. And this question is for Mr. Jaideep and Mr. Rajshekhar. Infrastructure building by the government and roads in particular has been a key demand driver. In fact, roads was almost a single-legged horse which was driving demand for a large part of the last upcycle. And infrastructure spending has a direct and immediate impact on construction equipment demand. So having said this context, and before I go to Mr. Jaideep and Mr. Rajshekhar, Rohit, can we run our second poll, please? The question is, in your opinion, is the Indian government doing enough to push infrastructure spend in the country given the current crisis? The options are yes, no. The government might want to, but lacks the fiscal bandwidth. Now, as you vote, let me ask the panelists what they think. So, Mr. Jaideep and Mr. Rajshekhar, I would like you to pick up this question, also keeping this context. Now, there are two parts to government spend in India, which is central and the state. With weakness in government revenue streams, particularly the state government's ability to spend is highly constrained in the current year. And Mr. Sharma touched about this briefly at the beginning too. So we at ICRA estimate that up to 3.3 trillion of aggregate state capex of about a ballpark 5.5 trillion, which they spend in a normal year, will get curtailed, which is 54% of the spend. And some states are at risk of almost the entire capex not being feasible in the current year. So how do you see this impacting construction equipment demand in the coming months? Mr. Rajshekhar, over to you, sir.
Yeah. So good afternoon to all. I'm Rajshekhar, Director of Mining and Construction, BEML. I just want to share a few thoughts about my journey from April to September now. So April, we were wondering whether we'll open our factories at all in our life. Finally, we opened in May, first week. Then how to come to factories was the challenge in the May month. Yes, we started coming. Then June month, how to start operations. That was a challenge. Then that also we did. And surprisingly, at the end of September, we were 5% better than last year. So it definitely shows the demand has picked up. But let me tell you, because compared to others, I'm not giant in construction equipment. So I'm with mining and construction combination, I'm a big player. So therefore, let me talk on the combination of both. See, normally my business is 80% is mining and 20% is construction. But as I said, I'm 5% better than last year. But the ratio today is 92% mining and 8% construction. That means it's clearly that growth what has been shown in the mining, same thing as not, is not showing in the construction side. Why it has improved so much in mining? Because but the government of India has given instructions to all the institutional customers or the organizations like Coal India, SAIL, all that. You have plans for capital expenditure and you got to spend within this December. So therefore, a lot of tenders are coming out with big equipments, mining equipments. Many tenders are coming. So the government here, there is no financial burden on the government, right? So the whole expenditure has to be taken care of by the industries. So they told the industries, you bloody well get all the orders for all the equipments. Therefore, a lot of tenders are coming. That's the reason mining, a lot of improvement has happened. When you come to construction, many people are the small contractors, right? There are small contractors, small companies and all. Here, the government, it just cannot give any directive. You have to buy the equipment. It cannot be given, right? So therefore, here government needs to give more pushes, more incentives are required. Directives will not work. Anyhow, that's the reason I selected the third option. Government might want to, but they are constrained by the fiscal deficit. That's why I leaked my voting. That's what I voted for. That's the thing. So the thing is, many places the migrant workers are shifted away, and they have to get back. These contractors have to get back the workers. This we have 19,500 crores budget is there for the Gram Sadak Yojana, and there was 61,500 crores is allocated for Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. These are fantastic schemes. But what is the guarantee that the bills will be released and money will be paid to the contractors or respective employees there? If that guarantee is, I don't know how government provides, but they have to provide. They have to ensure that. Then all the workers, migrant workers who have gone to, many of the people are from North India, Bihar, Jharkhand, many people, they have gone back. We have to get them back. So that's how it's very important to pass the bills and clear the payments very fast in the sector here. The numbers are there. The numbers are good. I mean, as my other panelists have shared, 1 month, 2 months, okay. But is it sustainable to give the same numbers for the next 3-4 months? Then only we can clearly say, yes, the numbers have improved. Otherwise, even I want to say, temporarily it looks good. I don't want to say that yes, the tide has completely changed. Now we are up. I cannot say that. Because it has to continue for 3 months. Then it can sustain for the next 3 months. If it goes 6 months continuously like this, then we can say it has turned. Otherwise, we cannot tell. So other than releasing of the bills, ensuring the payments for the contractors and all that, maybe taking care of the health issues and ensuring some insurance schemes for all these people, guaranteeing them some hospital benefits and all that, the workers may come back. And there are a lot of transport issues are there to get them. So when all these things come up and construction sector when really picks up, this is true not only for construction, it is all over rural projects and also for infrastructure projects. Then it will pick up. So that's how government has to work on these three factors. Whether they have the enough financial muscle is available for government to carry out all these things is that one question we have to see how the government reacts. But otherwise, wherever the big companies are spending money, I think it looks good because they have the directives to spend the money.
So big question on government ability to spend, sir.
Yeah, government ability to mobilize money. I mean, if they have some money, they'll spend. It's not like that. But ability to mobilize money, because the GST collections are also not, I mean, they are okay, but not very encouraging to support all these schemes now, right?
Mr. Jaideep, your take on this, sir.
Okay. Slightly different from Mr. Rajshekhar. While there has always been a bit of a concern in the last 6 months' time, ever since the COVID hit, that how much of the spending is going to be diverted from infrastructure into the priority sectors like health. And even right now, we are seeing the defense spending, right, with the China border issues happening. But in the last few months' time, we have seen that, the pace at which the new projects have been awarded, especially by the central government, has picked up significantly, right? Obviously, it's still a question as to how long is that going to continue? Is it a permanent pickup, or is it just again a combined Q2 and Q3, which is the March to April to June quarter and July to September put together? But we have seen a significant number of road projects being awarded on the infra side. There has been a special focus while the defense spending has gone up. We are also seeing a high level of road construction work and the projects being awarded in the northeastern part of the country and Jammu Kashmir and all these projects coming up, which is also basically, speeding up the spending. If you also see what the Prime Minister has said in his speech in August, the amount of money which the country is going to spend on the infrastructure, roughly $1.24 trillion worth of spending has been committed over the next 5 years' time. Now, obviously, that's a commitment. Even if 50, 60, 70% of it comes, it's still going to be a huge amount of spending on the infrastructure side, right? It remains a question whether the government will have the fiscal bandwidth to basically spend 1.24 trillion, in the next 5 years or not. But for sure, there is a focus. The government understands that, if you have to grow the economy, if you have to kickstart the economy back again after this COVID blip, there has to be significant amount of expenditure need to be done on the infrastructure side. Also, with all this migrant labor issues now happening across the country and a lot of people, losing their jobs in the construction segment and all, and a lot of other industries, the infra sector also is one of the India's largest employer for the semi-skilled and unskilled labor, right? So various governments, right from central government to some of the state governments, recognize this fact that in order to get the population back to work, in order to reduce the unemployment, infra is one sector wherein if they do a bit of a push, that is going to absorb the maximum number of semi-skilled and unskilled labor. With that focus, if you see states like Uttar Pradesh and all, they are really speeding up some of the construction projects, some of the infrastructure projects. They have even reduced some of the timelines on some of the projects in order to absorb the huge amount of manpower or the labor which has come back from various southern states and western states into states like Uttar Pradesh. So I think the government has no other opportunity but to spend on the infrastructure side, right? Because apart from giving a push to the economy as a whole, it is also going to sort out some of the challenges which they have got in terms of the employment of the semi-skilled and unskilled labor. So we believe that, this focus is going to continue. Obviously, there may be certain temporary changes in the priorities, as we right now seeing is a bit on the health sector, right? There's obviously going to be a more major spend on the defense, but I still believe that, apart from health and possibly defense, infra is going to be one of the top 3 priority sectors for the government. And we expect that, next year, as some of our panelists have already said, we are already seeing the increase. We are already seeing the growth. We have to be very careful about this quarter, which we are sitting October to December quarter. If it sustains, that shows that, it is a real growth. And it's a quarter, the July, September quarter was not just a temporary effect. But we still expect that, the next year, especially for the businesses which are heavily dependent upon the infrastructure segment, they are going to see a significant growth year on year. I mean, between 2020 calendar year to 2021 calendar year, we are going to see a significant growth because of the focus of the government.
Okay. So 50% of the capex in the country happens at the state level. And with the state's fiscal position being the way it is, what about that piece of the capex? Does that go off? And if that goes off, does it take out a huge chunk of demand?
So I mean, the answer is something what I said earlier, right? Some of the state governments, like I said, UP and all have already started to prioritize the infrastructure segment from their budget, right? because if they have a huge problem on the unemployment of the migrant labor returning back to the states, that is one area wherein they need to spend. Otherwise, they are going to be in much bigger trouble than trying to save that capex. So obviously, on the state side, with the GST collections and whatever we are seeing, the states not getting their share of the collections and all, that's going to affect for sure. But then again, I think because of the push on the employment and overall economy, even for the states, my personal belief is that, that will still be a priority sector even for the state governments. If it has to be cut, possibly it's going to be cut on certain other areas, right? I personally believe that when you're talking about infra, there may be a bit of a slowdown on the real estate, right? Something which has the buildings and that kind of a category, but not on the major infra projects. I think that's going to continue. There may be a bit of a slowdown for a few months' time or a quarter or two, but I think in the long grand scheme of things, a quarter or two doesn't really make a huge difference. As long as the focus remains of the government and most of the state governments, I think this is a sector which is going to grow.
Right. I think that's what like you rightly said. So the UP government is particularly pushing for all the expressways work starting there. Yeah.
And that's only being done to basically absorb the manpower. I mean, that's the major reason, because, this sector across India is the largest employer of unskilled and semi-skilled labor.
Right. Okay. Rohit, let's see what our audience has to say on the polls. So I think bulk of the people in the room agree with Mr. Rajshekhar. The government does want to, but lacks the fiscal bandwidth to work with it. 30% think that the government is doing enough to push infrastructure spend in the country. Excellent. All right. So we've talked about construction equipment and its various demand drivers. Let's look at mining equipment, and Mr. Rajshekhar already did touch upon this once. But I'll again go to Mr. Rajshekhar to begin with. Sir, if you could give us an outlook for mining equipment in the current year, and also if you could talk about any game changers in this industry, like we spoke in the beginning about opening up of mining for private players. Is that going to be a big game changer in this segment?
Yeah, there's presently, because Coal India is the biggest purchase of mining equipments, and they have a plans of increasing gold production from present 650 billion tons in the next 3-4 years. So there are a lot of plans on there, and this year already they placed orders for 35,000 crores now. 8,000, 9,000 crores equipment they are planning to buy within the year. So for all the players in the mining equipment manufacturers, we are very eager to participate and take as much as possible for this year, right? And coming to presently, the trend in Coal India is going for the big equipments, massive equipments for high productivity, and with all the latest technological features and all that. So that's a trend. So what happens is when the mining is given to private side and with private mining and all that, the trend will slightly change. So it may not be, the investment may not be on a massive equipments, but it will be small and more equipments. That means something similar to construction equipments may get into mining also, because that's what most of the private players, they don't want to go into a big investment and buy on big equipments. Normally these big equipments you can sustain only if you use these equipments for 17 to 20 years, big equipments. I don't think they'll be planning for such long. So the private miners, they'll be looking at the projects for 5 years or 6 years. There they'll be looking at high productive small equipments. So the trend may change. Suddenly the construction equipments finding a way into mining. Suddenly, I mean, my ratio also may change, 80 to 20%. Even the same construction equipment I'm selling for mining, but it may change. Another 10% this side it may come. It may become 70-30. And same thing with the other manufacturers also. That's the trend.
Sure. Right. If you were to put an outlook for mining equipment growth in the current year and the next, what would it be, sir?
Yeah, it definitely this year it will be 10 to 12% compared to last year, and it's continue to go like this for the next 2 years. Okay. Then that investment stops, because it's a cyclic. So every 6 years they buy the equipment, and then it stops. Then we have to see after 3 years. But till this year and the next 2 years will be good.
Right. Okay. Mr. Jaideep, same question to you again. There's a school of thought also that the bringing of private miners and private players into this space will actually get more complicated or more technology intensive equipment in the industry. So where are you on this point, sir, and on the outlook for mining equipment?
I mean, mining has been a very cyclic business, I think, and again, various metals and various commodities behave differently. Like, a peak in the iron ore will maybe not the peak in the coal mining and all, but, but I think opening up to the commercial mining or the private players is possibly going to bring in more players from an OEM perspective, right? It then makes it easier for a lot of other private players to enter, not only from a contract point of view, but even from supplying equipment and new technologies point of view, because certain times what happens if you're dealing with a large, state government, state-owned entity, the process of, introducing new technology or new equipment is a very tedious process. So I think if once that hope opens up to the, now that in a lot of sectors it has already opened up, this is actually going to be more exciting for a variety of companies. I think that is going to help speed up the introduction of the new latest technology in a lot of these state-owned entities, because there are a lot of contractors are going to use these new machines. And as Mr. Rajshekhar said that, this is also going to, and some of the contractors are not going to look into the horizon of 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, because their contracts may not be that long. Some of them may be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So that will also bring in a bit of a mobility, right? In terms of more mobile equipment wherever it is possible. It will probably bring in smaller range of equipments, but highly, I think, technologically advanced equipment, right? And I think it's going to probably, set the demand trend over the next few years' time. And, a lot of these state-owned entities will possibly see the benefits of going into some of these new different kind of equipment. So I think it's really going to be helpful. It's possibly going to speed up the industry, speed up the whole sector as a whole. And we have also seen in, say, iron ore mining, the new mines are now being auctioned, right? A lot of these mines were closed in the past many years because of the Supreme Court judgments in terms of the environmental issues and all. Those are also now being kind of cleared in most of the, in Odisha, all the iron ore mining is almost open. We are expecting a bit of a change happening in the Goa mining, so a lot of these changes are coming up. So I think overall as an industry, and speaking in terms of industry, I'm talking about the original equipment manufacturers industry, I think it's going to be pretty good and positive, for us going forward.
And would you hazard a guess on a number, sir, on an outlook for FY21 and 22 for the sector?
I mean, on the mining, for us will probably be 15 to 20% up for next year for sure.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, sir. Now, we've spoken about demand, urban, rural, infrastructure, mining. Let's now look at the enablers, and Mr. Mathur did touch upon this very briefly when he picked on the LTVs in this segment. So this is the financing environment here. So now our understanding is that the financing environment is quite tough, and our discussion with financiers and dealers do show that there are some issues with lower LTVs, more due diligence, more time taken, and this is making it difficult for majority of the dealers and end consumers to secure funding, even though liquidity is adequate. Now, before we go to our panelist, Rohit, can we run our third poll, please? The question is, in your opinion, which of the following factors will give the maximum boost to demand? This is a multiple choice question, so please pick as many as applicable. Improved financing and liquidity conditions, release of payments to contractors, increased government spending on infrastructure, pickup in rural demand, return of labor and operator, opening of mining for private players. While you vote, I would like to request Mr. Mandar and Mr. Mathur to briefly talk about the impact of tight financing environment on demand for equipment. How is this asset class performing for lenders, Mr. Mandar?
On the financing side, there was a glitch last year.
Sir, you're not very audible.
No, it's better. It's better.
Yes, please. Yes.
All right. Last year we, if you see the last year, full of last year after the elections, there was these issues of NPAs going up, the bad debts increasing for the NBFCs. But I think that continued up to November and December. The things started coming back to scale number one, where people were willing to finance, they were willing to fund. And post the COVID, I think it's the physical structure is not preventing them to do the financing. Most of the banks are back. Most of the NBFCs are back. Uh, we generally don't see that kind of resistance which we saw last year. Last year was much worse than what we see today. Okay, during the moratorium period, obviously there was restriction on funding, but now that has eased out because moratorium has been removed. It's already closed. There would be a certain amount of bad debt that will get into the system, and that is basically getting recognized by RBI also in various forums. And there is a funding model available for that also provided to the banks. I think going forward, it could be more of the investment, where from the government is going to get the investment, because the money is not there. The money has to be used for many different purposes. So how do we address? How do we get the PPP model running? Government has been trying that for quite some time, which has not happened to that extent. Can we get into the bond markets? That could be one way of raising funds. And there's another direction that the government has taken in the recent past, where they are talking about infrastructure development bank. We used to have that. HDFC and all those banks were basically started with that fundamentals. Now, I think there is intent from the government to push up this infrastructure spend, because they know end of the day they have to front end these investments to bring the GDP back into some shape. So I feel financing would not be an issue, because it's basically a direction that has been taken. Funding from NBFCs would not be an issue, as long as there is demand on the other side, because if there is demand on the other side, the cycle would complete. The contractors would get paid, and in turn they will pay the financiers. So it's basically I related more to the demand. And one question I just thought of putting my thoughts on, that the exodus or reverse exodus of labor. You see, India has a policy of taking people to the job, not job to the people. So you have 52 cities in this country which have population greater than 1 million. And you have 40% of your workforce working, on self-employment. So self-employment probably comes from the urban or semi-urban India, most of them. So I think this reverse exodus is going to happen. The Manrega scheme would not give them that kind of funds where they can survive for that long. And I think we have seen that, in the factories, people have started coming back to the full flow. We had constraints up to last, if I look at July as a month, there was some constraints. People were not coming, but end July, people started coming. Even our vendors are getting people, they are back. Plus, there would be a certain amount of people who were struggling in the urban India. They would stay back. They would definitely stay back. But that, what will happen is that will translate into increase of mechanization level on the infrastructure projects. So when I gave you a number of 100 to 15, that is with 6 to 7% mechanization happening. The moment your mechanization goes up, the consumption of equipments would go up, and I feel that end of the day, the unorganized sector, where people generally tend to struggle a lot for their daily meals, probably those people would be left behind, and they would get engaged with the rural jobs. There's some employment schemes that are happening there, so probably I think that would get sorted out. Maybe we not get 100 people 100% back. We would get 80%, but 80% is what was required.
Right.
So this COVID has also given us one hope that we can work with lesser number of people, be more productive, and we can do away with all the fat that we had in the organizations. and come out more muscular, outside of COVID.
All right. Mr. Mathur, how does the financing environment look? So you, like I mentioned, you spoke about LTVs before, and if you could also help us understand how are OEMs working with the dealer network to ensure that they stay afloat? How is dealer inventory in the market right now?
First of all of us, the OEMs and the financiers, have to be convinced that the India story continues to be robust. That means the growth will happen. It will be driven as a positive intent from the government, and the government, to the extent it is responsible, will make the money available. If the government is making funds available for jobs done, the contractors and the companies that are doing these contracts will pay the financiers on time, and suddenly everybody will be interested. What has happened in the last 8-9 months that we have seen is, first we had that NBFC related issue that scared a lot of financiers, and the government also changed its guidelines, which sort of recast the entire NBFC framework for funding of our kind of equipment. Companies which had a strong principle backing them up and who were sitting on potentially large sources of funds were not deterred at all and have continued to stay in the game. Companies which did not have that sort of a backing have sort of slowed down their entire operation, but this is not a reflection on the overall availability of funds or the sentiment. As a matter of fact, the funding itself, wherever there has been a problem, has not been related to the availability of funds at all. The second thing is, this I must say that while there has been a reshuffle between the various financiers as to who does how much of funding in our kind of industry, the overall availability of funds for the equipment suppliers plus the availability of funds which are given for dealer management channel, which you had mentioned, has not been found wanting at all. The financial institutions, the banks which provide the dealer limits where they pick up equipment from OEMs like us and other players, has not been wanting. They have been more than willing to, within the reasonable framework of financial jurisprudence, have been willing to increase the limits and provide extra money depending on the scale of the business available. And even when the business has declined, while they have been very cautious about sanctioning higher limits, they have not controlled or slashed down the limits significantly. So overall, I would like to believe that funds have been available in the Indian market. Now, what has changed, however, is the perspective of these finance companies when it comes to the opportunities or customers who are looking for funds. There, the parameters have been related to the past history, the normal evaluation of the company that is looking for funds, but also the impact of the recent financial policies that the government has released, has changed, which is the moratorium effect. People will actually hold on to their loans without having to pay a single installment for a couple of months. So 6 months down the line, the liability to pay suddenly becomes so much, and therefore they will not be able to generate that kind of cash. It is those kind of apprehensions which is more on the line of prudence and care, which the financials have sort of held back their funding. The government on its side has been more than fair. They have been pushing these finance companies and especially the banks to continue to fund, but they have been very prudent. So some of the players, I wouldn't like to name them, have been a little extra cautious in funding. But now that the scheme is over, I think funding will be back in the game. And so funding should not be a problem as long as the overall India story continues to be robust, as long as the customers continue to be paid and they keep paying the finance companies. I don't think that's a concern at this point of time. From the OEM perspective, the dealer limits are given by the banks. That is a continuing story which the banks are supporting. There is a way to look at that. Depends on the risk appetite of the banks, but it's really not a major concern at this point of time. It's something that we have to keep on calibrating with. The OEMs have to do it with the financing agencies to make sure that the dealers do not create a default so that the money stays available to the banks and the overall story stays positive. So I think we are okay on that front. Many of the OEMs in the Indian industry are bringing their own finance companies. They do have finance arms internationally. So many companies have already come into India and more are coming. We know some license requests are still pending with the government for setting up their own equipment funding firms, which they run like independent finance companies for their own equipment. So that's a new story which is unveiling. So people have either set up their own financing companies. I'm talking about the OEMs, especially the international players, or people have brought in large pools of money with which they are willing to fund the finance companies who will in turn use their credit limits and their funds availability to fund the market requirements.
So overall financing is not a big concern as long as the asset class behaves well. And for the asset class to behave well, the contractors have to be paid on time. And our understanding is that, you know, organizations like NHAI have been paying on time, at least since March. The release of funds has been adequate. State governments, we're not so sure about the payment cycle there. So would that be your opinion too, sir, that NHAI payments are going on time?
No, NHAI payments have been very good. As a matter of fact, I think all of us, most of us would have attended these seminars, webinars, which have been, where our minister has also spoken, Mr. Gadkari has spoken several times. And in his absence, people like Mr. Sanyal, their advisors, they also speak. And they have told us that while there has been a major disruption, I'm talking about the road sector specifically, there has been a major disruption because of COVID and things have gone wrong. They have done two things. First of all, the overall spend and the overall progress of the road projects at the NHAI level has not been depreciated in any way at all. They continue to do that. They have used this time to sort out a lot of issues which were traditionally creating issues with for award and execution of these contracts. They have sorted out and streamlined a lot of such issues, which we will see the benefits of, including land acquisition and such issues have been sorted out. And third, they have made sure that the money is available to the contractors who are executing. As a matter of fact, if the national project, the statements are to be believed, they are going to prepone the execution of several of the projects. So they want to do the Bharatmala project within the next 2 years practically. So that kind of money being available and the projects being awarded. The award of the projects creates the sentiment. People know that we have awarded 10,000 kilometers of roads, only 6,000. So we are walking into the next year with 4,000 kilometers of road projects already being awarded. And the pipeline will keep on increasing, which sustains the demand by pulling the sentiment in. And as long as the government sticks to its commitment of making the money available, I think we are all on a good wicket. Things will sustain. Yes.
Sure. All right, sir. Thank you. Rohit, can we share the poll results? So 83% of the people in the room think that increased government spending on infrastructure activity is what's going to give the maximum boost. 60% largely agree that release of payment to contractors is very key, along with improving financing conditions. 53% also think that opening up of mining for private players is going to be a big boost to demand. Interesting. All right. For want of time, sir, I'm going to ask only the last question of the last two speakers, Mr. Jaideep and Mr. Sharma. We've got a lot of suppliers in the room today. So the question is, you know, there is an immediate pressing problem of the supply chain, which if you could address briefly, but also if you could tell us about the imports versus the local supplier ecosystem. Given the current Make in India Atmanirbhar scheme, how do you see the import versus local supplier ecosystem panning out? Mr. Sharma, if we could start with you, sir.
Due to paucity of time, I'll keep it very brief and to the point. As far as our supply system is concerned, let's go back 2 years when I think most of the suppliers, including the OEMs, built up sufficient capacities because we were looking at 2-3 years of very good growth. And I'm talking of up to 2018-19, when 25%, 30% growth was happening. And a lot of capacities were built up. So my feel is that in terms of capacity availability, we are not going to have a problem from the vendors in terms of building up new facilities, etc., not required currently at these volumes. Surely we can plan 2 years later, for 2 years later rather. So I don't see capacities as an issue. The second thing about imports versus localization. This is something our industry has always pointed out to the government ministers and other officials. We are very focused on localization from the beginning for many years. And I can say that there are most of the equipments that we manufacture in India have something like 50, 55, 60% local content. There are equipments which go as high as 85, 90% local content. The low local contents are those equipments which don't have numbers, and therefore it is not really worthwhile to localize and make in India. The other aspect of what is the balance 35-40% of imports in most of the equipments which we manufacture. Those are specialized equipments, high technology, like we have done a bit of a joint study in our association. And these are things like electronic items, things like hydraulics. There could be some items connected to engines, etc. And I'm happy to say that having recognized the need for looking at these, we have already set up a committee within the Construction Equipment Forum to look at issues of how to, work on this, get vendors and localize. So the issue which primarily comes to my mind is there are two issues. One is that how do we get those vendors with those technologies into India, because the volumes are not very high for them to be attracted to come here and start manufacturing in India. So that's one issue we are debating. We are even looking at talking across industries. There could be items which we use, which could be used by automobiles, could be used by CVs, etc., which would give a volume game to vendors overseas, and we could attract them to come to India and start manufacturing here. And also, we would like to see, can there be some kind of pooling in, creating, I would say, parks and pools of manufacturers whereby we help them export also, and thereby the volumes come up. So our industry is very focused on imports versus localization. And quickly answering the other part of your question, that do we see any problems and disruptions with supply chain? Yes, there are 2-3 factors which we have to look at. One is, which has been discussed a lot, about return of labor in time. Personally, I don't feel that is too much of an issue right now, because we are gradually ramping up volumes and people are coming back. So I don't hear that to be now any major issue. And as we go forward, we'll get those workers working in the factories of our vendors. My worry is that some vendors who are multi-location, multi-plants, etc., they could be integrating a bit of their manufacturing facilities, downsizing or joining up and cutting out a few of the locations, etc. That could cause a disruption, because some vendors that I have discussed with, they have already put this kind of a action in motion. And the third factor which I worry about is that as we ramp up now, many vendors would not have planned on imported equipment, imported raw materials rather, or components to be available to ramp up that capacity. So I look at these factors as the possibility. The third one can be overcome by, there are local agents, etc., but that will increase the manufacturing cost. However, these are 2-3 factors which I see could result in, I won't call it a disruption, but could result in our growth story going a little slower than it could. That's my take.
Mr. Jaideep, finally, we'll close with your comments on the Indian supplier ecosystem and what can be done. Can India become a manufacturing export hub?
Yeah, so as Mr. Sharma had said that, I think that our industry, the construction equipment industry, has been one of the industries wherein there's been a lot of focus on localization from day one. At least speaking for my company, we, in the last 10 years, we have got up the localization content to around 85%, right? Now the balance 15% components, we have the intent to localize. There's no reason why we should not localize, but it's the availability of the right supplier base. It's the availability of the right technology within the country. Things like some of the high power engines, some of the hydraulics, some of the PLCs. These are the areas wherein, we haven't seen a lot of supply-based development on the larger equipment. Obviously, each equipment is different. So there may be suppliers for a particular type of equipment, but in our sector, we haven't seen that happening. In terms of the challenges, what I see is, the vulnerability of some of the supply base, which we have seen right now in the COVID situation, that, in terms of the cash flow, cash crunch, manpower management, right, on some of the small suppliers. I think that is something which sometimes puts a brake on your localization efforts, right, in terms of not having very large suppliers, right. I think most of our construction equipment industry is dependent upon small MSME kind of supplier base in a lot of those components, which are based in and around your region, right? So if you're South-based, OEM manufacturer, you'll have a lot of suppliers. So what happens is that does not have, most of the suppliers don't have that large, infrastructure. So if a COVID hits or a situation goes down for 3 months, 6 months, these supply base gets challenged financially from a manpower point of view and even financially. So I think in terms of improving the ecosystem, we should look for, the growth of large suppliers, right? Who have the financial muscle power to withstand some of the ups and downs in the industry. Because I think our industry is a lot more dependent upon small supplier bases in a lots of parts of, and then obviously there are components which we are dependent upon the global companies which have set shop in the country, right? And we are buying in Indian rupees and all. But I think there's still a lot of growth opportunity in the supply base in terms of them becoming big and basically addressing a lot of the sectors and a lot of the companies in across the country rather than being very regional supply bases. So I think that's my take here.
So volumes by sourcing to the global markets, including
yes, exactly, and we do. I mean, if a supplier gets approved in our supply in the Indian factory, the doors open up for them to supply to our factories in the US or Europe as well. And, and obviously there's obviously a lot of focus in all the multinational companies in the best cost country sourcing, right, at this moment. And then when they talk about best cost country sourcing, it is mostly coming to India and China. So I see a huge opportunity going forward. I think the supply base has to grow, right, which they can be more reliable in terms of the export supplies, right, because you need to make sure that the quality and the timeliness especially is maintained, right? So there's a huge scope. Good thing is that there are a lot of MNCs now working in this country, which opens up the doors for all these supply bases, which is in India, and all the suppliers who are in India, the component suppliers, to basically make their inroad into the Indian subsidiary. And then from there, they can take the journey up to all the global factories. So that's a very big opportunity, which is in front of us. I think in terms of the intent, I think this, as Mr. Sharma said, our industry has been at the forefront of localization. The customers demand localization. The customers don't want to hear that, okay, this pump is down and I'll get you this pump in 1 month from Germany or, anywhere else. The customers expect you to have it in, on the site in 24 hours. You can only achieve that if you have a localized supply base. So I think it's also being driven by the customers in this industry, because the large infrastructure projects, large mining projects, they don't want the plants to be down for 15 days, 10 days. They want it to be immediately up and running. So the whole ecosystem has to be local in order to be running at that pace across the industry.
Right. Interesting. So thank you so much. And with this, we're closing our session. We've covered a lot of ground, and I've taken the liberty to stretch the session a bit. I'm sorry, gentlemen, about this. One quick final poll to gauge the mood of the day. And this is for everyone, including the panelists. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most optimistic and 1 being gloom and doom, where would you rate the industry right now? Rohit, would you like to take some questions while we wait?
If the speakers are okay, if we can take another 5 minutes or so, then I can, ask a question. So one of the questions that, that is repeating is on emission norms. So what is the commercial and technical impact that you industry leaders see owing to the emission norms? If any one of you would like to take that.
You would like to say something?
I'm sorry?
I was just asking Vikram if he would like to say.
Mr. Sharma?
Yeah, Mr. Sharma.
Okay, the emission norms for wheeled equipment are very clearly defined, the timing. As far as off-highway is concerned, we are still waiting for the government announcement. However, considering that it's an inevitable thing.
That has come yesterday.
No, that is for wheeled equipments. I'm saying for off-highway, still not defined. But let's look at it this way. Yes, there are 2-3 aspects to the cost. One is that looking at Atmanirbhar Bharat and looking at some of the likely policies of the government, there could be some impact on imports in the coming times. And there is a group of equipments which would continue to use imported engines and imported other supporting equipments. Cost is likely to go up, definitely. The second is that the technology itself, when you move from BS current 3 to 4, is itself bound to add cost to the whole system of engines and the exhaust system. And therefore, it is bound to have an impact on cost. But I think when costs go up all around and technology is something which is then mandated by the government, the customers would by now be more in a frame of mind to accept that kind of cost going up. But let's be clear, whoever can manage a lesser increase of cost certainly would be the winner. We are a price sensitive market, but cost going up is inevitable. There is no escape to
that. Thank you, sir. And Rohit, would you share the poll results for the final poll?
Yep.
35% of the industry, or the people in the room at least, think that we are closer to optimism than gloom and doom. 35% of the audience is at 7, and about 24 is at 6. So bulk of you are at above 5. So we're leaning towards an optimistic scenario. Thank you so much. Rohit, over to you.
Okay, great. So with this, we've come to a close of this session. Thank you all for joining us for today's session on Indian construction and mining equipment industry. I hope you enjoyed this session and found it fruitful. Firstly, I would like to thank our speaker group for taking out the time from their incredibly busy schedule for this. We really appreciate your support. And I sincerely apologize that we overstretched by 20 odd minutes here. Secondly, I would like to thank our wonderful audience for their inquisitiveness and their attention. And again, apologize to them that we couldn't delve further into the Q&A. You shared a lot of questions, but I only had them for an hour. So maybe we can do a future session on all your queries as well. And lastly, I wanted to take this time to especially thank our partners, the Belmax Group, Nandan Petrochem, and NBM and CW for supporting this session. Thank you all for joining us once again, and we will see you next for our upcoming session on the two-wheeler sector in India on 21st October 2020. Please stay tuned.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.